Hello, boys and girls and Cougar parents. Let's get out our study guide. Our study guide has Mr. T. I think he's right there. You can see him. Yeah, study guide has Mr. T on it. This study guide will go over all of the Unit 5 equations that we covered: one-step, two-step equations, as well as multi-step equations, equations where we have variables on both sides of the equal sign, literal equations, as well as word problems that become equations. Study guide equations. Let's look at numbers 1 through 9. These are all one-step equations. We should be able to zip through it pretty quickly. All you need to do is first examine the equation. I have c plus 5 is equal to 13. What's happening is c, we're adding 5 to it. So we need to do the inverse operation of that, which is minus 5. And what I do to one side, I will do to the other. Remember, the goal is to solve the variable, you have to isolate the variable. That means get it all by itself. Now I have c all by itself on one side, and 13 minus 5 is 8. And sure enough, if I go back and plug it in, 8 plus 5 is equal to 13. Let's take a look at number 5. I have 7b is equal to 63. What's happening to our variable b here? Let's examine it. I see it's being multiplied by 7. What's the inverse of that? Divide by 7. And what I do to one side, I will do to the other. The 7's cancel each other out. That leaves me with b is equal to 63 divided by 7, which is 9. Moving right along, number 9, I have 72 is equal to w divided by 3. Now it looks a little weird, but it's really not. Once again, you just examine the equation, ask yourself what's happening to the variable. It's being divided by 3. What's the opposite or the inverse of that? Multiply by 3. So I multiply this side by 3, and what I do to one side, I have to do to the other to keep it balanced. And my 3's cancel each other out. And I'm left with w is equal to 3 times 72. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 7 is 21. 216 is equal to w, or w is equal to 216. Moving right along, we now have two-step equations, and number 13, I have 5x plus 17 is equal to 47. We examine our variable, and we ask ourselves what's happening to it. We're adding 17 to it, and we're also multiplying it by 5. Well, we need to do the inverse of both of these operations, and we need to go in the inverse order of operations. So I need to get rid of the plus 17 first. How do I get rid of a plus 17? I subtract it, and what I do to one side, I do to the other. The 17's cancel each other out. I bring down my 5x. 5x is equal to 47 minus 17, which is 30. Okay, I examine my equation again. It's a one-step equation now. X is being multiplied by 5. What's the inverse of that? Divide by 5. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. The 5's cancel each other out. I'm left with x is equal to 30 divided by 5, which is 6. And I'm done. Number 17 is a little more complicated. It's still a two-step equation, but this time I see that x plus 8 is all being divided by 4, and that's equal to negative 10. Normally, I would get rid of what's being added or subtracted first, but since it's embedded, it's inside this funky fraction, I need to get this out of fraction mode. Okay, and anytime you want to get rid of a fraction, you just multiply it by its denominator, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. And this is the inverse operation. The inverse operation of divide by 4 is multiply by 4, and what I do to one side, I do to the other. The 4's cancel each other out, and now I have x plus 8 is equal to a negative 40, because a negative 10 times 4 is a negative 40. Now I have a one-step equation. What's happening to my variable x? I'm adding 8 to it. The inverse of that is subtract 8. What I do to one side, I do to the other. And these cancel each other out. I bring down my x. X is equal to a negative 40, and then I take 8 more away, which gives me a negative 48. Now we have some multi-step equations. Number 21 here, I have 4 times the sum of 2g and 3 is equal to 52. The first thing I need to do is distribute this I need to simplify this by distributing. 4 times 2g is 8g, and then 4 times 3 is 12, which is all equal to 52. I need to isolate G. The first step is to remove whatever's being added or subtracted, and I have a plus 12. The inverse of that is minus 12. And what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other to keep it balanced. That cancels out the 12s. I bring down my 8G, which is equal to 52 minus 12, which is 40. G is being multiplied by 8. The inverse of that is divide by 8. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. The 8's cancel each other out. I'm left with G is equal to 40 divided by 8, which is 5. That brings us to our next equation. This equation here I need to simplify as well. I have 5e minus 13e minus 7 is equal to 9. Well, 5e minus 13e is going to give me a negative 8e. Minus 7 is equal to 9. Okay, now I need to get rid of my minus 7, which is plus 7, and I need to do that to both sides. Okay, the 7's cancel each other out. I bring down my negative 8e is equal to 16. E is being multiplied by negative 8. The inverse of that is divide by negative 8. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. And I get E is equal to a negative 2, because 16 goes, or I should say, 16 divided by negative 8 is a negative 2. I have a multi-step equation here with a variable on both sides, number 28. It's 9w minus 2w plus 8 is equal to 4w plus 38. Well, I need to combine like terms. 9w minus 2w is 7w plus 8 is equal to 4w plus 38. Okay, now I need to, when I have variables on both sides of the equation, I need to remove the variables from one side and leave them on the other. And you always go after the small guy, whichever side has the fewest variables. And 4w's is less than 7w, so I'm going to get rid of the 4w by subtracting it. And what I do to one side, I need to do to the other. Okay, they cancel each other out. I bring that down. I have 38. And then 7w minus 4 of the w's leaves me with 3 w's. I bring down my plus 8. Now I can subtract. I need to get rid of the plus 8. The inverse of plus 8 is minus 8, and I need to do that to both sides. That cancels out, and I'm left with 3w is equal to 38 minus 8, which is 30. W is being multiplied by 3. The inverse of that is divide by 3. I do that to both sides, and I get W is equal to 10. Over here, I have what's called a literal equation. Now, a literal equation, you have to solve the variable in terms of the other variables. I have area is equal to length times width, and I want to solve for W, okay, in terms of W. So I treat it just like any other equation. In fact, I really think literal equations are easier. There's less calculations usually than your standard equations. And I say I examine the equation. A equals L times W. What's happening to W? I want to isolate W. It's being multiplied by L. Well, what's the inverse of that? Divide by L. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. The L's cancel each other out. I bring down W. W is equal to area divided by length. And that's it. I'm done. I solved W in terms of A and L, the other two variables. As always, I hope that was helpful, and if you have any questions, please bring them to class tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye.